Hey everyone, in this video I'll share a few tips on clutch removal and basically most things to do with the clutch and flywheel on a Subaru. This applies to any EJ20, EJ25 and is mainly for the STIs with the pull tab clutch. So as you can see, we've already separated the transmission from the engine block. Now there was a little bit of a problem with this particular vehicle. Being such a new car, which is only about 6 years old, this has never had a clutch before, so no one's ever opened it apart from when it was assembled at the factory in Subaru. So what the problem was is that the gearbox would not release from the engine block. I'll just put this light on so you can see it. So if you notice here, there's a dowel pin on this side, but the dowel pin on this side is here. Can you see how it's rusted there? So basically what happened was the dowel pin is rusted onto the gearbox. I'll take you that side and show you what I mean. Because of this, the gearbox would not release no matter what we tried on it. We tried penetrating fluid, tried tapping it, tried shaking the gearbox up and down, tried realigning the engine with jacks, moving it up or down. We tried various different ways, but nothing was successful. So the only alternative was to apply heat, hence the reason why there's no dowel here. So what we did was applied a bit of heat on that side and mainly focused on this side here. So with the torch, similar to this, I'll put up a picture now. You can use anything like this or similar to these propane torches. You just want to heat up this whole housing here. Heat it up well. That'll basically expand the bell housing around that area, and that's what freed up the actual dowel. So that's a key tip for when you're removing your gearbox. If it's stuck on and not willing to come out, just apply heat. Don't bother wasting your time with any other method. We're under the vehicle now. The second tip I have is when you have the gearbox out, you have to remove the drive shaft and both left and right axles. So since you're going through all their work, I would highly recommend replacing the axle seal, which we've done here. So this one, that one there, and this one here. Just replace them all blindly. Also, don't forget to replace your rear main seal. You come through all that effort to remove the clutch. It just makes sense, and it's a lot easier now just to replace it, so you don't have to worry about it. Inspect your oil separator plate. If it's got any leaks or any signs of weeping, then you'd want to get that resealed as well. Next part of the inspection, go ahead and clean your gearbox. Use degreaser or brake cleaner, anything of that sort. Clean your gearbox and clean the complete block. Make sure there's no dust or dirt or anything remaining. As I was saying earlier, the next part is to inspect this collar here. You want to actually feel it, and you can run your fingernail here, just run up and down all around. You're feeling for any scratches or any deep grooves or anything of that sort, any abnormal roughness. There'll be a little brake dust around the sleeve there. Go ahead and clean all of that. If you got stubborn dust that's stuck onto, or old grease that's stuck onto the sleeve, you can use a little Scotch-Brite pad similar to this and just lightly clean everything off. Then you can go ahead and use brake cleaner and just clean off the shaft and everything. So you want to go ahead and inspect that, make sure it's fine. If it's not, then you want to replace the sleeve. You can order them directly from Subaru or get them secondhand. Also check and clean this area here, this one here and this one here. That's where the rod goes for the clutch fork, which we will discuss next. These are the axle seals I showed you in the gearbox earlier. Now it's very important that you pay attention to each seal because they are directional. Remember that. If you look closely there, you can see it's marked R for right, and you can see the arrow. So this is the driver's side, or the right hand side of the vehicle. Make sure you get these correct, otherwise they will not last. They will basically wear out and start leaking oil within next to no time. So these two seals, they are directional, so remember that. There is a price difference from Subaru and different part numbers, so just make sure you get that correct. This is the rear prop shaft seal. I'll put up a picture now so you can see all the part numbers of these three seals. While you're in there, it doesn't hurt to inspect and service your gear shifter bushing. Give that a grease, or just replace the bushers if needed. Now is the best time to do it, like I said. Now this is a critical check that you must do on your Subaru. Notice the fork. So this is a tech note from Incl. So if you look at this release fork to that, this one is basically like new. However, if yours is excessively worn like this, it can cause clutch shudder. So you want to go ahead and inspect your clutch fork. Make sure it looks something similar to what my one looks like. If it looks like that, it's fine. You also want to inspect the bushing here. Make sure there's no deep scratches or grooves or anything of that sort there. And also inspect the part where the slave cylinder goes here. There shouldn't be any excessive wear, and don't forget to grease that. So we'll move on to the next step, and I'll show you how to properly grease the transmission sleeve where the release bearing goes in, and how to install this clutch fork. Don't forget to replace your pilot bearing here. Normally, nowadays if you get a kit from Incl, they do include it. A few years ago they never did, but now they do. So the key here is to apply just a little bit of grease. You don't want an excessive amount, you just want a little tiny bit. So this is the grease packet that normally comes in the kits. Realistically, you only need about half of this packet to give you an idea of how much grease you should be using. Don't forget to grease the splines, it's very important. Also grease the front snout of the input shaft, which goes into the pilot bearing. Another key point is use clean gloves when applying grease, and also make sure when you pull out your clutch disc, make sure you've got clean gloves free of any grease. So now after greasing it, we'll just run the clutch disc a few times to spread out the grease. And any excess grease on the clutch disc itself will show itself around here. We'll just take out the clutch disc and wipe it off. See how it slides easily? You want to make sure it slides easily and it turns well with the input shaft. Once you establish that it goes in and out fairly easily, we'll move on to the next step of grease. This is the new pressure plate from XZD. XZD is the OEM supplier to a lot of car manufacturers around the world, especially in Japan. I normally like to opt for XZD products because I've never had an issue with them in the past. You'll notice here on the flywheel, there's a couple of marks. There's a yellow mark and there's a blue mark. And now this is the old pressure plate, the factory one from Subaru. Notice the large yellow dot over there. Now that mark was originally put there by Subaru. They stated that you have to offset the pressure plate by 120 degrees or more from the flywheel, and this is how it was done from factory. But after talking to a few experts in the clutch industry and speaking to XZD, this is not needed anymore, as all the new pressure plates are neutral balanced, so they're all balanced to a neutral weight. So make sure you grease these points. If I put the light on, grease that point there, grease that point, grease that point there, grease that point. So I like to do it both on the release bearing and on the clutch fork itself. You can also apply a tad bit inside here, but like I said, make sure it's minimal, because you don't want anything flying out and potentially contaminating the clutch disc or the pressure plate. Wipe off any extra and you can go ahead and install it. Also, don't forget to grease the main pivot point here where the clutch slave cylinder goes onto. Now that we're done everything up here, we'll go back down and install all of this into the gearbox. So make sure to install the clutch fork correctly. It goes, see how that, where the clutch slave cylinder goes in? It has to be facing this way. So it looks something like that. Looking at it from the bottom, that's what it looks like. That push rod there goes in a certain way. It just goes in there like that, it slots in, and Hicks plug holds it in, which goes near the starter motor there. So you want to just check and see, it should slide freely. Notice the points where we greased earlier. That's the critical points in which you only need to worry about. So this part is done. Now we'll go ahead and torque down the flywheel. So just for reference, if anyone needs it, the flywheel is torqued down to 75 Newton meters. I like to do in stages, so go to 30 Newtons, then go to 50, then go to 70 finally. And also use a bit of Loctite on your flywheel bolts and on your clutch cover bolts. So you can see it here, got the bolts all cleaned up, and I've got some Loctite 243, which I've been using on all my vehicles. towards the end of the video, coming up shortly, I've uploaded all the specifications, all the torque specs, and the bolt patterns of each of the tips that I was talking about for the clutch when replacing the clutch. So that goes from the filling of the gearbox oil to the torque of the engine mounts, flywheel torque, the front suspension bolts, the intercooler bolts if you still got a top mount, prop shaft and rear differential, the torque settings there, the slave cylinder, and any other associated diagrams that were needed. I've added it to the end of this video.